campaign? Is it sending out a few press releases?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that that can empower a producer. Is simply like, I need a line item of where the marketing fees go, and if you have a reputable distribution company, they will give that to you. Others, if they don't, like, oh, no, 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 then you're like, again, it's the same thing. Like, these are great questions to ask these companies, because normally it's just a poster. So they have a graphic designer. They redo the poster knowing what works for their library. You know, when they sell the bundle, like, they all have to look the same. That's why it's like when we look at posters, easily you're like, God, everything looks the same, doesn't it? Like, there's comedies have like a certain way. It's like a white background. And it's like really bright lit, you know. And then it's like the horror films or thriller films. There's always like something, like, you could totally tell, like, it's a cut and paste.
Lurking coming out of
yes, the dark. Right. And it's they all have that look for the thumbnail. So there's a posters on it. Sometimes there's a trailer recut. So they'll charge their own internal person to do that. Press releases. A lot of times it's just travel fees. I mean, think about it. These guys, the ability to, like, if they have to go to film markets internationally, you know, there's November's Santa Monica AFM, then they got to go to Berlin for the Berlin International Film Market, then France for the Cannes Film Market, then there's Singapore has one as well, and China has a film market. You know, somebody's got to pay for the travel fees and the dinners and the wining and dining. And when they say they have relationships, yeah, they probably do. But on your dime, you know, so it's like, you know, where does that money, I think majority of it comes from the expenses of the sales agents having to travel. It has to be paid for. And the marketing is limited to poster, trailer, and some other, like, other small things like that. But like, they might have like a turnkey system they use for social media, but it's like, how many of us are following some independent film distribution company on, you know, Facebook or Twitter? Like we don't have any loyalty to these distribution, you know, companies. Even the big studios. It's not like a bunch of us are sitting around like, I can't wait for the next Warner Brothers release. They just always do a great job. You know, it's like, or, you know, it's all, it doesn't work that way. So it's a great to see, just ask that question. Like, do you provide a line-by-line item of where the marketing expenses go, so we know how it's being sold?
Right, and is it worthwhile to maybe pursue companies for probably a much lesser fee to do some kind of, I don't know, viral ad campaign for you, where, you know, they're looking at Google Analytics and pixels, you know, Facebook pixels or whatever it is, and run that kind of campaign, like spend those dollars on a viral campaign. You know what I mean?
Right. And a lot of distribution companies don't have that. And it's actually funny in the book publishing world, when you know, again, this is all just years of just all the different people have come on to Film Trooper and all the aggregation of information. Like, it was like this over the years, this massive information overload, and now it's like deciphering it for, like, you know, some like words of wisdom or something. But it's really one of the great things I always remember hearing from the book publishing world was that writers write, publishers publish, but nobody sells. The same thing holds true for the film industry. The filmmakers make the film, distributors distribute the film, but nobody sells the film. Sales agents are just selling films to distribution companies. But a distribution company is doing nothing more than, here's the platforms we have access to, we just throw it up there. We don't have like a marketing division that does just specific like viral marketing, you know. That's left, it's actually crazy, but in the book publishing world, in all these media art worlds, like a writer, an author is expected to have a following already, is expected to do the marketing of telling their followers that it's been published. The publisher is not selling anything. They're just getting into the distribution outlets. So the same thing, the film, you know, these distribution companies, you know, it's like, you know, it's only some of the major studios that have that might have a marketing division that will focus, because the number of films they're releasing a year are actually limited. So they have a team that's like, okay, we got to get ready for this quarter. the summer release, then the award season. Like, it's over the years they got it dialed in to like knowing where they put their marketing dollars. Many years ago, one of the first podcast interviews I ever did was with a coworker of mine at Sony PlayStation, Oren Pele, who made Paranormal Activity. So we went through that blow by blow of all the emotional roller coaster that he went through to see that film become the phenomenon that it was. And the interesting thing was there was a high level of luck that had to happen, because it was originally being looked at by DreamWorks, who had a partnership with Paramount. But then Paramount and DreamWorks split the agreement, and it just happened to be that some of the people from DreamWorks went over to Paramount, and they had this gap in because they were going to release all these DreamWorks projects, but now they didn't have that relationship anymore, and so they had this gap of what was going to be released that year, and they were like, and the marketing team was like, had nothing to work on, so they were like, let's test something out on this Paranormal Activity. So it was just luck that they had like got creative in how they would set up the marketing for that. That was a very rare and magical moment in time for that thing to happen. So in hindsight, how does that work for the independent? You're better off taking that $10,000 and doing the pre-sales, so you're guaranteed pre-sales as a voucher, and then taking some portion of that other money and having somebody, a firm that is not part of the movie industry, that they specialize in, Facebook, marketing or Google marketing, all that, the pixel stuff, and like how to, and see if they've ever done anything for other film producers, and just use their expertise to like, hey, we need a campaign to run for the first 2 weeks before this thing is released, so we can get interest, and once it's on like for the pre-sale window, and so that way it's in our news feed, on Facebook and Twitter or Instagram, so this is a company, so it's a much more concentrated effort of what you spend your money on, that is going specifically to your film, as opposed to a company that says, we'll make a poster and some travel fees,
Right, exactly. And then just to clarify, so companies like Distributor or Bitmax, they don't do any marketing, but yep. Are they literally just an aggregation company?
That is all they are.
So they're not going to connect us with different platforms, or are they?
No, they have access to the platforms because they you pay for some of them. The way they build out, it's like you can pay like a certain fee, and you're only going to get like a handful of platforms. But if you want multiple platforms, you just have to pay more, because every platform has sometimes a different parameters of how they want the file set up. So that's all they're doing. It's like, you give me your file, you pay me a flat fee. It's like, okay, I need to do quality assurance tests on this and make sure it's converted correctly to the iTunes format. Now I have a different file that's got to go to Amazon. I have a different file that goes to Crackle or Hulu, whatever it is. And then our relationships is because our company has been vetted, and we are one of the approved aggregators for these companies. Our job is like, you pay us, we just make sure your file is correctly suited to all these different platforms, and we set it up that way. That's why Netflix doesn't work that way, because Netflix is all self-contained right now. Yeah.
And they have their own preferred vendors, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Approved. But then who manages that relationship? Like, let's say we work with Distributor, and they make sure that technically we have all the specs and whatnot to deliver the film to the different platforms. Who is managing that relationship with the platform? Like, who is saying, "Hey, iTunes, do you want to distribute this film?"
Oh no! But normally it just gets put on. Like, as long as it's
automated, it's automatic.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, like, there's a lot of films that just get onto iTunes and Amazon and those platforms that you never hear of, because they had no marketing campaign behind it. The aggregator doesn't care. They just take, like, you give us the flat fee. Our job is to make sure your files is of spec, and that content wise too, it doesn't have pornography or something like that. Like, it has to be vetted. Their job is to vet that it passes all the requirements, and then they just go, it's been approved, and then it's been submitted, through us, and then you wait like 8 weeks or something, and then they'd say, well, it looks like it'll be released within this week, on the platform. But there's a lot of product that's just put up there that nobody knows about. I have a lot of.
Must be super saturated.
It's so saturated because there's no sweat off the back of like iTunes or Amazon because they're just a storefront. They're just a massive like search engine. They don't have to house all this stuff. They don't have to, as long as it's all automated. They don't care. It's like, oh, yeah, throw your stuff up here. But what they try to promote on their storefront on the main page is like studio stuff and anything that has traction, that has like anybody's made an effort of like they see some pre-sales or something interesting about a film coming up. And again, that's something that Jay Freeman from Bitmax was talking about. He goes, yeah, we talk to those guys all the time, and we let them know like we see a film that has it to like a producer has their stuff together and they're actually doing the right thing. We just let them know. It's like you can just ask. Like you can literally just ask the aggregation companies like, we're doing all this stuff. Is there any other feedback you can give us to make sure that when we release finally on these platforms, we've done everything we can to have a successful launch? And I guarantee you they're going to be more than happy just to be like, yeah, let me tell you. If you're not getting that feedback, you can just go on to like another different aggregation company. But it's but yeah. So to clarify, an aggregator is just a quality assurance company that gets your file ready and it just automatically just puts it on these platforms that they are approved for. Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense. That actually answers some questions for me. But so then why do you need a distribution company? Meaning if Distributor or Bitmax or these aggregation companies can automatically get it onto these storefronts like Amazon and iTunes, is what makes the distribution company different because they can take it to the studios?
No, a distribution company's benefit would be we see the benefit in the international side of things. Because every territory has their own way of working. We were just in Paris this past Christmas, and it was interesting. I actually brought our Apple TV and plugged it in, and saw that some content was available, some wasn't. But it was interesting because it logged into our United States account. But I could see, like, even though we're in France, if I had a French account or a friend that was like that, and that we could see, like specific content only approved and licensed for that account or that territory. But there was some content wasn't available for us in overseas. So, and that's how sort of the international market works, is that they have to hold on to these territories. So, Germany might have their own, which drives people in Europe nuts because they have this Netflix account and they can't go from like Netflix, France to England and carry with them sometimes the same content, because but there are ways to like hackers get around it with geotagging and work around like using VPNs and different things to get around tricking the system of where they're actually where they're actually logging in for the content. Well, with that said, the distribution companies, that's how they kind of run, is that they have to. And again, this is this is a good point to bring out. A past guest and a friend of mine, Scott Kirkpatrick, who works in the distribution field as a senior vice president, and he wrote 2 books. His first book was Writing for the Green Light, helping screenwriters understand how to write films for these companies. They're like real production companies and distribution companies that need the content specific for the international film markets. And then he wrote in this new one called Introduction to Media Distribution. And this one just came out. And it's a really great primer to understand what their world of the distribution company goes through. And it's basically like a playbook. Like, here it is. And as he describes it, they're working hard. In their world, they have to find good content that a specific buyer in a certain territory overseas wants, and if they have this relationship they built up over years, which is important, they know that they can sell something sometimes before it's even made, which is why certain distribution companies will get into the world of having a production company offshoot, because they're like, you know what, if we can just start making specific film content for these buyers that we know that we have relationships with, it'd be a lot easier than finding, spending all this time finding somebody to try to fit this